It's about to go down with Marc and Cathey, a live coaching show about dropping ideas. Marc and Cathey coach and have conversations with brilliant idea creators who are reimagining the world through the expression of their words, thoughts, and actions.
It's about to go down, y'all. I'm Cathey Armillas.
And I'm Marc Williams.
Marc Williams is a world champion public speaker. He started off as a speaker and made it all the way to the world champions in Malaysia. He has now become a world-class and badass speaking coach.
And Cathey is an awesome, inspiring, she's my sister, she's my mentor, she's my coach. She's done the TEDx from coaching to speaking to organizing, and she can put the whole world on fire and drop knowledge like it's never been dropped before.
And our guest today is Justin Riordin. He is the founder of Spade Archer, and Justin has an idea that he wants to drop on the world. And his idea is the rules and regulations of an open relationship. Wow. Justin, we don't hear about that a lot. People don't talk about that a lot. So can you give us a synopsis of what that is?
Yeah, it's about to go down. You're about to go down. I'm about to go down. We're all about to go down. These are the rules and regulations of an open relationship. We should do it right. So my husband and I have been married for 20 years. And when you're in a gay relationship, there are not a lot of rules and regulations as to how a relationship is supposed to be made up. And so as this generation of the first generation of men who is allowed to be married, allowed to be open with our relationship, we're the ones who are kind of blazing the trail. We have nobody to look up to, and everybody is looking up to us as to how we're supposed to do this. And so we've been tasked with, even when we had our wedding, like, what traditions do you want to have? There's not going to be a garter. Are we going to have a wedding cake? Like, how are we going to do that? By the way, we didn't have a wedding cake. We did a buffet. There was eclairs. It was fantastic. But we have to make up all of these rules. And during this COVID crisis, I feel like a lot of people have been getting really stir crazy. There's a lot of boredom. There's not a whole lot of risk in business right now. Either your business is in the tank and you have nothing, or your business is totally thriving. It's been a very black and white type of business environment. So a lot of people have been coming to me and asking me, hey, I want to open up my relationship. You guys have been doing this for 20 years successfully. How the hell are you doing that? Because to a lot of people, the idea of not being monogamous is horrifying. They are sure that it is the first shoe that's dropping. They're just waiting for the second shoe to drop and they're going to get a divorce. And so I've been gathering my thoughts around this idea of how to do an open relationship. And the idea is let's teach some people how to make this successfully work. Because a lot of people think that it's about sex. I got to tell you, the secret is it's not about sex.
I love this, Justin. As speaker coaches, Marc and I, no matter what we're talking to somebody about, and the ideas obviously can go in a whole array of areas and arenas, we're always kind of like, if you were to give a TED talk about this tomorrow, how would you position it, whether or not you're doing that? And so I think it's really cool, first of all, that you're talking about something that doesn't get talked about a lot. There's a lot of misconceptions about it. A lot of people think a lot of things. I love the whole, it's the biggest secret, it's not about sex. And so we would love to dive into some of the, tell us some of the rules. Let's get the juicy details so we can kind of uncover this idea. Right, Marc?
Well, I think the first thing is that the reason why gay men have been so successful in having open relationships is because there's no women in gay male relationships. When you add women to the mix, things change an awful lot. Because in gay society, you're like, hey, do you want to get a pizza and fuck? And if somebody says no, you're like, what, you don't like pizza? Like, what are you talking about? Men need to understand it's very different for women. If we look at the English language, there are no negative words for a man who likes to have sex. There's gigolo and stud and Don Juan. All these have very positive connotations. If you look at the same thing for women, there are no positive words that mean a woman who likes to have sex. The closest you get is cougar, and even in that sense, that's a negative because they're old and they're going specifically for young people. There's slut, there's whore, there's wanton, there's baggage, there's hussy. None of these words are positive. So when you think about this dichotomy, women have gone through their entire lives thinking that if you like sex, you are associated with the less than and the worse than. And if for men, if you like sex, you're associated with the better. And so it's much more difficult for women to go through this than it is for men. And so having this testing ground for just men involved can be a really good way to try to figure out how these things work, because there are some bad connotations. There's some freaky deaky kinky shit out there that, you know, even my husband judges me for. And so, you know, women are going to be judging themselves heavily. Men are going to be judging the women heavily. And even more than all the other things, women will judge other women even more heavily for being in an open relationship. So the number one key rule in open relationships is that the more that we reward honesty, the more it will grace us with its presence. And that can go with just about anything. The more we reward fear, the more it will grace us with its presence. The more we reward anger, it will grace us with its presence. The more you reward jealousy, it will grace us with its presence. Whatever emotions you are rewarding in your relationship, that emotion will come back more and more and more to you. So here's what it looks like. Let's just say Joe and my husband and I have a rule that says we have to use condoms with everybody else when we have sex. Okay. And Joe goes out and he has sex with somebody and he forgets to use a condom. And he comes home to me and he says, man, Justin, I screwed up. I broke one of our rules. I didn't use a condom. It was like for a total of 2 minutes, but I feel terrible. And if I say, you're the worst person ever, you broke our rules, you are terrible, I fucking hate you, get out of my house, Joe Riordin is never going to be honest with me again because I didn't reward his honesty. And if I'm always happy with him, whenever he lies to me and doesn't tell me what's going on, he's going to continue to lie to me. Now, if instead I say, man, that must have been so difficult for you to tell me that. It must have been so hard for you to be honest with me because you know you broke the rules. You were already probably really angry at yourself, and you were probably really afraid that I was going to get angry at you too. And I need you to know that I appreciate you being honest with me. I don't necessarily know how I feel about the rules being broken and what we're going to do at this point, but I need you to know that I appreciate your honesty. And in that way, the next time he fucks up, and maybe it's really bad, maybe he does something terrible, he's going to come to me first and be honest with me. So the more I reward him with his honesty, the more his honesty will grace us with his presence.
Wow.
So that's kind of number one. That's the big one.
Can I jump in here for a moment? There's something so interesting about what you just shared that I'd like for you to consider entertaining, right? You started off with how there's this double standard, right? Between men and women, and the adjectives and the nouns that you pulled out are so true and honest. I don't know if anybody can disagree with how both sides are perceived when it comes to sex and sexual relations, right? But in the double standard of what you pointed out, you also, in a very unique way, pointed out a universal theme. And there's a universal theme here about rewarding honesty in relationships, right? And how key that is. I thought of it as a parent, especially what you just said at the end, right? As a parent, I want to make sure that my children always feel that they can be open and honest with me. So if I punish them and I scream at them and I make being honest a horrible thing, they'll never come back to me. So I just wanted to celebrate for a moment because you've got this topic that is like, it's fire, right? I mean, you just came right out of the and you hit hard with it, right? But there's such genius in something that seems like it's very specific and yet has such a universal connection. And I just want to commend you on that and encourage you to maybe start off with hitting out with the fire, but making sure that for the parents, for the business owners, for anybody out there, that they grab this message about honesty. But I don't want to take away from the rules and regulations for an open relationship. So please tell us more.
And that's rule number one, right? Is reward honesty. And I got to tell you, although we practice that with my husband, that's the first place I did it, was rewarding honesty in our open relationship. It's the same thing with my son. My son my son is 15. He got busted for smoking pot. We found a bud in his backpack. I mean, you know, you smell a bud in your house, you're going to smell it, right? So I have the bud in my hand, and I call him into the room and I'm like, hey, Dooley, come in here. So he comes in the room and he goes, so if you are honest with me, you're not going to get in trouble. If you lie to me, you're going to be grounded for 5 weeks. You're going to lose friends and screens. How many times have you smoked pot? And he thought for a moment and he said, 5. And I was like, great, let's talk about this. And so at that point, we opened up the dialogue and he didn't get punished. And I got to tell you, we've had no problem with marijuana use in our household since then. But we gave him a chance to be honest with us. And at work, you know, I run a home staging company. We're in people's houses all the time. Things break, things get broken. And our policy is that if you break something, all you have to do is tell someone and you won't get in trouble. Because at least if you tell someone, we can fix it. If you don't tell us, we can't fix it. And then that way the whole company gets punished. And so we have a reward honesty policy at work as well, which has worked fantastic for us. I will tell you that we have come up with 2 words that are positive for people who like to have sex. Specifically for women, we came up with the term yes lady. Somebody who is a yes lady, she's a yes lady. She enjoys to have sex. Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
And then the non-gender specific version is consensual. This is a person who enjoys things that are both sexual and consensual. They are consensual.
Oh my God, I love that.
So no negative, no positive connotations, just very neutral. I think rule number 2 is that in an open relationship is that we must establish the rules. So one of your rules might be, you're allowed to kiss other people. Maybe that's one of your rules. Maybe one of your rules is like, hey, no licking anybody else's ass. That's not allowed. That's against our rules. And the rules might be, like one of our rules is that a relationship with somebody else cannot take away from family time. So we have dinner at 7 o'clock every night. We light the candles, we sit down, we have dinner. You cannot take time away from family time. That's one of our rules. For a long time, our rules were no emotional entanglements at all because we were afraid that was going to ruin our marriage. Those rules have grown and changed and evolved. I think in the beginning, our very, very first rule is that we were allowed to jerk off with somebody else, but we couldn't do anything else. That was our rule. Those things have progressed over time. The rules are always in flux, but the rules should always be voiced out loud. What I find with most people who are in monogamous relationships is that they have never sat down with their partner and defined what is monogamy for them. Because partner A might say, you're cheating on me if you have a dream about somebody else. And partner B might be like, well, if you only get your hand this far into their ass, then that's not cheating. But if you go this far, that's definitely cheating. So if we do not establish and talk about what monogamy is for us or what open relationship is for us, it is impossible to play a game of Monopoly if you don't know what the rules are. Monopoly is almost impossible anyway with the rules, but without rules, it would be totally impossible. You'd have no idea what game you're playing. And so therefore, how do you know when you're breaking the rules or not? So even if you're not considering going into open relationship, please define the rules of what your monogamy is. Because hugging, like I even have a friend who in his monogamous relationship, dancing like on a dance floor with another woman, to him is cheating. Which I think is very interesting. Yeah. He'll dance with other men, but he will not dance with a woman because to him that's cheating. So if we do not define our rules, we are destined to break them. We just all the time. Oh, write that down.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a great.
If we do not define our rules, we are destined to break them.
Yeah.
Wow.
I love that. Justin, to echo in what Marc said, like one of the things I really appreciate you kind of talking about this subject is if this is a subject to a lot of people that aren't used to hearing this, like it could seem really shocking, but the biggest problem in society, I think that there is when we don't understand something, we stay in our little space where we understand something and we try to make the whole world fit into the space that we operate into. So knowledge is always power. And I think it's a beautiful, to echo what Marc said, like always finding the thing that will make everybody care about it, because that's the connection point in. So if I'm not a gay man and I'm like, I can't even like fathom this whole scenario, but I can absolutely jump into the whole, like, wow, I never really thought about how critical it is to highlight honesty I love, Justin, how you use it across your life. I love that with Dooley, you said, okay, you gave him the warning. You said, okay, we're about to have a conversation. You can go one of two ways. You can be honest or you can be dishonest. If you're honest, you won't get punished if you're not. And then he comes up with 5. I love that.
Yeah.
Like, 5, it was 5.
He asked me the other day, he goes, when you say like, I already know the answer, I already know the truth, so you might as well tell me, like, how often are you bluffing? And I was like, never. I'm never bluffing.
I tried to call you out.
You're like, I'm never bluffing. You're like, not really. I'm always bluffing. I never know the answer. No.
I said, we make some assumptions, but these are not gigantic leaps. Yeah. Totally. There's pot in your bag. We are assuming you probably smoke pot. You're not just carrying around because you like how it smells.
Right. I love that. So Justin, just answer me this question really quick, because I think for a lot of people that are watching too, it's like you have these ideas, and it's like one of the questions is like, where do I put this idea? Where does this idea go? Like, where do you see you talking about this, and what would you love to see be done with this idea?
So many people are coming to me and asking this question because the books that are out there on these subjects are titled things like The Ethical Slut. And I think that the reason why the author of The Ethical Slut used that term is because, again, there is no positive term that means a woman who likes to have sex. And so if you add a brand modifier of ethical to the word slut, then suddenly it starts to de-dirty that word. Mm-hmm. And I think that for the average woman to walk into a store or to order online and have a receipt for something that's called ethical slut, I think they're going to have a hard time with that. Mm-hmm. And so what I would love to do is I would love to put this idea into a format that would be easily digestible with absolutely no trace. There's not a book sitting around your house. There's not some way that people could figure out that you listen to this. And so if this was a talk that was online, that you could go and you could absorb this in 12 to 15 minutes and take in the information that you can. I think a lot of this could be incredibly helpful. A lot of people, the reason why this idea scares the crap out of them is because of the idea of jealousy. So many people say, I could never do that because my partner or I would be so jealous. And so a lot of the words that I hear in these conversations are, I'm scared, I'm jealous, we're too immature. Those are the big things that I hear all the time. And so I did some math equations and I figured out how we can readjust those words with math. So if we take the word scared, like if we're scared, we're frightened of something. If we take the fear out of scared, what's left over is just excitement. Scared and excited are the same exact emotion. One of them has fear, the other one does not. And so it is okay to be scared of having an open relationship. If you take the fear part of that, then you get to be excited about having an open relationship. This is a new adventure for us. It's something we're going to face together. It's like when you're getting ready to go onto a roller coaster and like half your party is like, ooh, this is so exciting. And half the party is like, ooh, I have to go pee. That's the difference between scared and excited, right? So if we take the idea of jealousy, if we are jealous of somebody else, we want the thing that they had, but what we want is for them to lose it in order for us to have it. Okay. So the opposite side of that same coin is what we call admiration. And so admiration is when we want what somebody else has, but we don't necessarily want them to lose it in order for us to have it. And so the thing that separates jealousy from admiration is our insecurity. So if we have jealousy, if we take okay, so my wife goes out and has sex with some guy named John, and I am now jealous of John because he had sex with my wife. If I turn that around and I'm like, man, John did a great job of nailing my wife. I really admire his stamina. That's the same exact emotion, except for I am no longer feeling like it is a zero-sum game. It's if John has sex with my wife, it doesn't mean that I can't have sex with her anymore. And what's funny is that like when I step out and I go and I fool around with somebody else, it is in my coming back home that I love my family the most, that I am so appreciative of them, that they allowed me to go out, have that fun time that I had, and then come back to them and have a solid meal on the table at 7 p.m. That's when I most appreciate them, because I am allowed to have those freedoms, but I also have the security of being at home. I often say that it's like having the best of both worlds. You get to all the best parts of being single and all the best parts of being in a relationship at the same time. So if we can take that insecurity out of our jealousy, we are left over with admiration. Immaturity is a combination of fear and insecurity. So that scared minus the fear and that jealousy minus insecurity, you take the two things together, you get immaturity. Maturity is self-assuredness, like I'm good with me, plus empathy. I understand you, or at least I want to understand you. That's what maturity looks like. We want to stay away from immaturity, which is fear and insecurity, and we want to go towards maturity, which is assuredness and empathy. And so if we can erase fear and insecurity, bring assuredness and empathy into our relationship, all of a sudden I'm good with me and I want to understand you, we're doing great, because now I know you want to be rewarded for your honesty, and I can reward your honesty, and you're always going to be honest with me, and I'm going to be honest with you. And I got to tell you, even harder than rewarding honesty is flat out being honest. It's really tough, man, when you break the rules to come home and trust your partner and be like, I'm going to tell you something really bad and I need you to reward my honesty, to just remind them like, hey, you're going to be nice to me when I tell you this, okay? And you're like, man, I fucked up and here's what I did. Yeah. And then they come back and they say, you know what, man, that must have been hard for you. I really love you. And I really appreciate you being honest with me. It is the best feeling when you hate yourself because you fucked up and your partner tells you that you're still good. It is the best feeling in the world.
God, Justin, that alone right there is such a thing that people, I think, strive for. Like, I think when people mess up in anything, they're like, they already like have a lot of self-hatred. I have a question for you though, Justin, like how you are saying some stuff that I think people are very distant from. And some of the stuff that you're saying is so beautiful, because I see that you're trying to build a bridge, but I feel like something's still missing to make people go, wow, that's still like, that's a really far idea for me. And it's probably hard for you to remember too, because you guys are pros, by the way, like you've got a system in it. I've heard even that you've reworked it and, you know, so you're kind of over here now where you're like, oh, we've been working this for a long time. It's kind of hard to remember what it was like in the beginning when it was still shitty and like, it was still hard and like, we still messed up and like, it didn't seem like it was going to work. And there was a lot of emotions. And because I think in order for people to be able to consume what you're saying and do this, I think you also have to kind of build that bridge out a little bit more for them. So,
I've got a friend who recently came to me. Him and his wife are starting an open relationship. And what was really interesting is that they built their rules on very different platforms. So she helped him to build his rules, and he helped her to build her rules. And really what he was looking for out of an open relationship was more physical contact. He wanted to have sex with other people. What she was looking for was emotional contact. She wanted to be able to be intimate with somebody else. And so they both got to get these things from outside of their relationship and then come back together. And what was really the most interesting thing about it is that he said that they've been together for, I think, 15 years at this point. And when they came back together, they're now having better sex than they've had the entire time they've been in a relationship together, because they're both actually getting what they need now, which I think it was just like so beautiful. I'm so proud of you guys. I'm so happy for you. An open relationship doesn't necessarily mean sex. It doesn't necessarily mean intimacy. It doesn't necessarily mean emotion. It can be all three of those things, or any one of those things. And so it is very, very difficult to put all of your needs, emotional, physical, spiritual, financial, into one other person. Now, I will tell you flat out, like, if you look at those 4 different aspects of a relationship, emotional, spiritual, financial, physical, right? Joe and I are completely monogamous financially. We are not okay having other people come into our finances. Joe and I are completely monogamous when it comes to spirituality, and we were very monogamous for a long time when it came to emotions. We recently opened up emotions and as well as physicality. That's been something that's very, very recent for us. And for you and your partner, it might be that you're looking for spirituality outside, or maybe it's finances outside. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be all 4 of those aspects, but it's really tough to do all 4 of those for just one person all the time.
Yeah.
Wow. Justin, there were a couple of things. First of all, I really got to give you so much credit for the way that you just redefine monogamy in so many different ways, right? Monogamy in terms of finances, in terms of emotion, in terms of spirituality. I've never heard that before, and I really think you need to hone in on that on your message, because it just opens up your message to so many different things. So that was really great. I'm wondering, and I know you talked a little bit about work before. I'm so curious about how you apply this at work, but before you speak to that, something else that I think works really well with your message is this idea of, I don't point out the rules for what I want, and you don't point out, well, no, I'm sorry. Usually the way it goes is I say what you should be doing and you say what I should be doing. But you actually said it a completely different way. I'm going to tell you what I want. You're going to tell me what you want. I'm curious though, is there then a negotiation at that point? How does that process work?
So in 20 years, my husband and I have been together for 20 years, been married for 18. It is constantly an ongoing negotiation. The rules are re-examined and redefined all of the time. And a lot of rules get re-examined and renegotiated when we cross a bridge. Like we get into a situation where like, hey, I've got a buddy that I've been fooling around with for a while, and he invited me to go to Chicago to go see a rock concert. And we've never traveled with somebody else that we were fooling around with. In gay culture, we call it a trick. But I don't, because people don't say that. So, I've got this trick and we want to go to Chicago and we want to go to this concert together. Well, that was a whole new thing for us. And so we sat down and we talked about it. But because we rewarded honesty, my husband was able to come to me and say, I have this situation, I'd like to talk to you, versus what usually happens in a monogamous relationship, which is where the partner comes to them and says, I've got a business trip in Chicago, I'll see you in 3 days. And then they go off and they have fun with their Goomba, and then they come home and it's a total lie the entire time. And the Goomba is like, isn't that what the mobsters, the Italian mobsters call their girlfriends, the Goomba?
Yeah.
So, this probably sounds somebody like a straight couple's listening to this right now. This sounds horrifying. The idea of discussing a trip with your trick or your Goomba over the weekend with your wife before you actually do it sounds horrifying. But we were able to sit down, have a discussion around that, and be like, okay, well, what does it look like? How much money are you spending? How much time are you taking away from the family? What are you guys going to actually be doing together? How emotionally are you going to get with this person? And I remember there was one experience where my husband went away for the weekend and he came back and literally had a crush. You guys have had a crush before, right? You've had a crush on somebody. There's a reason why I call it a crush, man, because it fucking hurts. I mean, when you fall in love with somebody, my husband came back and he just was beside himself. And this was when he was probably 60 years old. My husband's 64. So he's 60 years old and has a crush. Mm-hmm. And we sat down and we talked about it. And I said, you don't know how fucking lucky you are. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, how many more times in your life do you think you will experience this feeling of being so in love with somebody that it hurts? And he's like, but I don't want to feel like this. But I said, but you need to understand, this is what greatness is. I'm not saying that it's great as in it's good. I'm saying it's great as in it's so fucking big, I can't even wrap my heart around this. Yeah. And I'm like, I know that this hurts. And I just have to tell you, I'm so happy for you, because at 60, you may never feel this again. And you're so lucky to have it. And I could have come at that and been like, you know, oh, what, you're in love now and you're going to move out with your stupid real estate agent friend from Denver? Fuck you. You know, and it could have been a relationship ender for me. And he could have come back. And you know what? He came back to me and he was like, I want to go back out there. I was like, make plans, go back out there. And he went back out there, and the guy was a total dick to him the entire weekend. And he came back and he was like, what a waste of time, and was totally over it. It was done. But I had to allow him the space to be able to go and see for himself that this person was not all that he was built up to be. Because, you know, crushes can be very blinding, right? Like you totally miss the fact that the guy's an absolute douchebag. That was one of the times when we really had to reach down inside ourselves and figure out what our rules were, what our negotiation process was, how we were going to do this. And because I looked back to rewarding honesty, my husband's being super fucking honest with me. And he's flat out telling me, like, I've got a crush. I could have come from a place of jealousy, which, as we know, jealousy is just admiration plus insecurity. So my husband is in love with this other person. And if I were insecure and not stable in my love with him, I could have all of a sudden been jealous. But instead, I know for a fact that I am the bomb when it comes to being husbands, and my husband's going to like straighten up and come back to me. And so I didn't have to be insecure. And so I was able to have admiration and love and appreciation for what he was going through.
Listen, here's a question I have, because a lot of times when I'm coaching people, I like to really focus on the impact of what you're doing, right? And some people could listen to your message and get lost in this idea of infidelity, right? And what you're talking about is so much larger than infidelity, right? It's really about honesty and openness and defining, I don't even want to call it boundaries, right? Just kind of defining the rules and regulations. Mm-hmm. But here's my question for you that I would encourage you to think about as you get this message out. How do you know this works? How do you know that being honest really works and helps a relationship? How do you know, what proof and what evidence do you have that being this open with a relationship actually helps a relationship? What evidence or proof, what results, what have you seen, what have you observed, whether it be in gay relationships, straight relationships, parent-child relationships, or supervisor to employee relationships? What have you seen is the proof and the evidence that what you're saying about having an open relationship works to make better relationships?
Can I give you the canned answer?
Yes,
go for it.
We'll start there.
This is the, you know, when they do the TED Talks and they say the thing 3 times? I'm gonna do this TED Talk 3 times. Okay, here we go.
Go for it.
Infidelity does not end relationships. Lies, mistrust, and miscommunication ends relationships. Let me say that one more time. Infidelity does not end relationships. Lies, mistrust, and miscommunication ends relationships. Even if you are in a completely monogamous relationship, if you lie, if you mistrust, and you miscommunicate, your relationship will end. All of these rules can be applied to your relationship.
That's the one, right? Like
that was it. That's where we went from double standard and only affecting this one and that one to universal. That just spoke to everybody and anybody who is in any kind of relationship. Lies, mistrust, and miscommunication is what ends and hurts relationships.
Every
did you say that?
one.
Wait. Did you say that 2 times, or did you say that?
I only said it
times?
2. I figured I said it the 3rd time.
He's gonna end with, don't worry. He's gonna end with it. Like he's gonna say it one more time at the end. It's gonna be the last line he says, and then there won't be any thank you, right, Justin? There will be no thank yous after that. There would just be the end. because that's my rule. Don't ever say thank you. Oh my God, Justin. So yes, here's the thing that I think too, when you're like, the way we opened with this was terrible. Like we should have opened with that. Like not having this conversation yet, that's what we should open with. I do think that's beautifully a way to position this idea, because what you basically do when you give an idea to the world as a gift, you say, hey, I have this idea. The reason I have this idea is because something I experienced. So I'm going to tell you my experience with it, but I'm going to give you this thing that I had to figure out through my circumstances. And maybe you have something that mirrors that might not be my exact replication, but here it is. And then I think that's the lead of the idea. And then I think your story, which is super juicy, super awesome, super different, super like out there for so many people. Like I would say the norm is not like, it's like, oh yeah, I'm thinking about this on it, even for gay couples, as you know. So like, I think that is such a great support, but that's your idea is that, like your idea is solid for everybody.
I think we should not use the term juicy to describe an open relationship conversation. Just saying.
All right, I'll stay away from these. How about we just go like, it's bold, right?
I'm totally harassing you.
And I'm totally back.
You are a riot.
No. But you know what I mean though, Justin? Like it's such a beautiful, and I know you as a human being and as a person, and you're so brilliant, you're so articulate, you're so open-minded, you're so empathetic. You can even hear it in your words on how, I saw some of your struggle when you were talking about your husband and how you must have struggled at the beginning. And I think that's another thing you need to do when you're speaking, when you position this. I think you need to not be as smooth as you are. Like you need to show some of your raw and open up the door a little bit more to how you actually felt at the beginning. Because I'm sure it wasn't, you've smoothed it out now and things are much better, but they weren't that way, right? The beginning wasn't beautiful.
No, the beginning was it was touch and go for sure. We were together for a year. We dated for a year. We were engaged for a year. We had our first 3 on our honeymoon. It took us 2 years of being in a relationship before we even considered having sex with somebody else. In the beginning, you fuck like rabbits. Like that's how every relationship goes. But 20 years into it, things start to dwindle. Like it's hard to get back on that roller coaster when you not only bought the t-shirt, you like designed and printed it yourself at that point. So, this roller coaster. Really well. Like, oh man, this is my 3rd version of this t-shirt. It gets old after a while. And what I'm finding is that a lot of people are looking to us because at this point in my peer group, I've been married longer than any of my friends. And that's it. And that's in gay years. 15 years of marriage. I'm sorry. Oh my God. It's 18 years of marriage. That's like 74 straight years. It's a long time. So all of a sudden my friends are looking to me and they're like, you guys seem to be like doing pretty well. What the fuck is going on there? And, when I first told my sisters that we were in an open relationship, one of my sisters looked at me flat at the face and she said, that's not a relationship. Just flat out, because it was like, it was something that was so foreign to her. She didn't even recognize it as a relationship. When we got married, this was in 2002. Gavin Newsom legalized the first gay marriage in 2004. When I invited people to our wedding, they said, we're really excited to come to your ceremony. And I was like, it's a wedding. And they're like, yeah. We're your union. We're really, we're excited for that. And I was like, it's a wedding. People didn't know what the fuck we were even talking about. Yeah. We were given like 30 or 40, wedding cards. Every single wedding card had a bride and a groom on it because there were no wedding cards that had 2 grooms. That Hallmark, that didn't even exist to Hallmark at that point. So, we are seriously like creating the wheel as we were going along during this process. So while it may seem like, all of this was new and we were doing something that was original, you got to understand that just the even idea of our relationship existing in the first place, all of it was original. So none of this seemed out of place. We were just trying to figure it out. If you look at the history of gay male relationships, it used to involve a hole in a bathroom wall where you would suck somebody off, and that was the extent of a gay relationship that lasted for a total of 12 minutes, if you were lucky. So, you know, we are really defining what relationships are, and honestly, I think that a lot of straight people could benefit from a fresh perspective on what relationships are. We, as straight people, we model our relationships on what our parents did. And our parents, I don't know about you guys, but I'm a Gen Xer. I was born in 1974. The divorce rate peaked in 1974. Baby boomers had more divorces, almost fourfold over what Generation X has had. And so the divorce rate has declined steadily since 1974. Our parents fucking sucked at relationships. My dad was married 4 times. My mom was married 3 times. There are 8 siblings between all of us, none of which are whole. I'm the only product of my parents' marriage. They're fucking terrible. And I'm basing my relationship on their fucking failures. I think there's a better way, peeps. I think there's a better way.
Yeah.
Wow. And, you know, and you don't have to go this deep into it because I know we're running close. But when you started talking about the divorce rate and how relationships have worked or not have worked in the past, so much of me wonders how much of that has to do with the lying, the mistrust, and the miscommunication. And something that stood out to me a while ago when we first met, you had mentioned that there are straight couples coming to you for advice about this, right? So, you know, I continue to go back to this is not a gay issue. This is not a straight issue. This is a relationship issue. And there are people who are struggling in their relationships who have come to you because what you're doing in your relationship in terms of honesty and openness and these rules and regulations has worked for you. You said 20 years or what'd you say, 74 straight years?
Yeah, 74 straight years. So we were married. We've been together since 2000, married since 2002. So married for 18 years, together for 20.
Yeah, you know.
I would definitely, I'm sorry, Cathey, I just want to say I would definitely encourage you also to consider those comparative details because that goes back to how you know this works. It didn't work in the past because they were not doing this. I come from a family or I come from a community or I come from a culture where this is going on and the relationships don't work. My partner and I decided we were going to change the rules and the regulations of an open relationship. And now it works for us and other people are coming to us for advice because they would like for their relationships to work as well as ours.
Yeah.
I think the big thing of it too is like, I'm tired of having this conversation. Like every single conversation I have is me teaching people how to have open relationships. Like, damn, let me just send you this recording. Here you go. Now you've got it. I don't have to fucking tell you about it.
Blessed. Here it is. You know, Justin, if I were to sum it up too, I think that you've given beautiful advice, and I would even call it, like in my mind, if I were like making up some kind of title, I would be like redefining relationships through the lens of an open gay relationship, which kind of still gives you that. It gives that your perspective and how you had to navigate through it is how you're showing how to redefine relationships. But everybody really needs to learn how to redefine relationships. Even if I was single and not in a relationship, I need to redefine my relationship. Like, how do I deal with people as a parent? You know, some of the things we talked about. And so I think you should. I think you've given us such a beautiful thing to think about. I think your idea is awesome. And I hope we've given you some good nuggets, but I think you need to end with your line. I think that's what we need to do. Your line needs to come out the 3rd time. So I'm going to give you the
drop
stage.
it, Justin, drop it.
I'm going to let you say it because you need to end with that.
Let me just say this one more time. Infidelity does not end relationships. Lies, mistrust, and miscommunication ends relationships.
Bam! And that would be a standing O. And you heard it here first.
She said it's going to be juicy and there's going to be a standing O. She's like, oh.
Justin, thank you for sharing your idea.
Cathey, you dirty. You dirty.
I'm dirty. I'm an ethical slut. What can I say?
You're a yes lady. You're such a yes lady.
I'm consexual. That's what I am. I'm very consexual. I love that, by the way. I love that.
You just like it when I make up words.
I love it when you make up words. Yes, I do.
You guys,
that's creativity.
This has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me out today.
Thank you, Justin. You're amazing. I hope
Justin.
this idea hits the world in a really big way because we all need to hear it. Thank you so much.
Thanks again, Justin, for joining us and for dropping your idea on the world. And for everybody who's watching and listening and paying attention, if you'd like to learn more about Justin Riordin, you can look him up and find out more information about him and his company at spade-archer.com. That's spade-archer.com. Justin, thank you again so much for joining us. And for anybody else out there who would like to drop your idea on the world, reach out to Cathey and I at marcandcathey@gmail.com. That's MarcandCathey@gmail.com. Spell it right, spell it correctly, and you might just be able to drop your idea on the world with It's About to Go Down with Marc and Cathey.